Metropolitan Traffic and Parking Commission meeting. If you are not satisfied with a decision made by the Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. And the second thing is, per the Tennessee Open Meeting Act, Public Chapter number 300, members of the public are invited to provide comments on matters germane to the item on the agenda, and we will do that after approval of the minutes. Okay. Request approval of today's agenda.
So moved.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's been approved. Approval of the July 10th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? Any comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Okay. All right. Before we proceed to the public comment, the chair would like to make a comment. First of all, we want to congratulate our commissioner, Angie Henderson, on her election as vice mayor. So congratulations. And we're also would congratulate a former commissioner, Councilmember Freddie O'Connell, who has potential to be our next mayor, which I think points out what a launching pad the Traffic and Parking Commission is for the leadership of Nashville. So good job, commissioners and staff, for your mentoring of the future leadership of Nashville. So don't forget about us. Okay. All right. Okay, public comment. The public comment section is designed for people who are here to speak about items that are pertinent to the Traffic and Parking Commission, not about trash or dogs, which are not under our purview. So if you have an item that you would like to discuss under our purview that's not on the agenda, please step forward. I think there's some folks here to comment about Murfreesboro Pike. Yes, please step forward, state your name for the record, and turn on the mic.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Jonathan Nash. I'm the pastor of the Napier Kitchen Table, and we are a church and community organization in the J.C. Napier and Tony Sudicum homes. My family and I live on Perkins Street, which is just one street down off of Lafayette, or Lafayette, depending on if you're local or not. And so we live in the community, and I've worked in the J.C. Napier and Tony Sudicum homes for the last 8 years, 5 kids and a wife. So we walk and push strollers and ride bikes all around that area. And so I'm speaking to the crossing of Lafayette or Murfreesboro Road, roundabouts the Lewis and Lewis Street and Lafayette intersection. So we just got our keys to a bright, shiny new building at 155 Lafayette, and that is our new community center. So we found ourselves now transitioning from working in the community to now needing the community to have safe access to our space on the other side of Lafayette. So our building would be on I'm not sure what side of the street, but the opposite side of the street from the public housing. And it's a very dangerous crossing. People have been hit even recently. A few people from the community have been struck by vehicles at that crossing. There is a crosswalk at the Fairfield and Lafayette intersection, which is just a block down, but it's not the place that people actually cross the road. People cross the road further up. And so we're looking at what potential options we could have for the community to cross closer to the Lewis Street intersection.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any commissioners want to ask a question?
Yes, sir, please. Have you approached your council person, or is there anyone that has any recommendation about we need to propose something? Are you asking staff to look into a different kind of crosswalk?
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I'd be asking staff to look into a different kind of crosswalk. We will absolutely be proceeding with our council person. If you happen to know, that Lafayette used to be the dividing line between District 17 and 21, Freddie's 19, and now it's all one district. So it's a new council person. Terry Vo will now be the council person of that whole area, and this is my coworker, partner, Nicole Vaughn, who also works for Napier Kitchen Table. So we'll be reaching out to Terry, but this has not been the need feels very urgent, but the ability of the council person to do much at this particular stage feels lacking.
Thank you. All right. So staff will ask that you do research on this item, please. Okay. All right. Sir, anyone else wish? I had Carol Norton. Okay. Did you want to speak to this? Okay. And what's your name, please? Turn your mic on. Minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Okay. Hi. I live at 109 Claiborne Street. Pardon my tardiness. I was actually helping one of the residents in JC Napier Homes who is experiencing homelessness. So we're trying to get her place to stay tonight, which leads me to speak on that because there are a lot of unhoused individuals who are at that major intersection of Fairfield and Lafayette, Lafayette turning into Murfreesboro Road. And so it is urgent that there's something that is done, having priority of crosswalk. As y'all can see there on the map, Lafayette, or maybe you've driven it, it's very busy. And on a couple of the side streets, my street is Claiborne, so I live on the public housing side of Claiborne, but sometimes those lights are very long. And so people will just cross the street because they don't, they got to get somewhere. They got to make the bus, stop or whatnot. And so people would just cross. And so there's been some accidents there as well. And then, of course, there are students from the Napier Sudacum homes who go to Cameron elementary and high school, Cameron Middle School and high school, which is also Lead High School. And so just making sure those students are able to cross. And sometimes they're late to school and there's not a crossing guard there. There is a crossing guard there for part of the time. So we've also worked with Napier Elementary School, different school, on a walking school bus. But this year, Walk Bike Nashville will be partnering with Cameron Middle and High School for a walking school bus for them too. So there are some, community partner initiatives that have taken place. But you also have the party buses and some other things that go on there. And it's just a really busy area and corridor. And we would love for it to just be prioritized. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Ms. Norton. Please turn on the mic, state your name for the record.
It's got a green light.
Okay, so it's on. And limit your comments to 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I want to address your narrow streets policy. I don't know when it's been revised, but we have a stretch of South 9th that is difficult with the parking from WeWorks at 9th and Woodland. You don't know how we're praying they're really going to go out of business this time. There were rumors of that a couple of years ago, but they have taken over parking in our neighborhood. And it's a narrow street, and according to the guidelines, parking is allowed. Thank goodness they don't park on both sides, which technically I suppose they could. I don't know when you've revised that policy, and I know you probably go by ASHTO, but I looked it up and I wasn't going to pay $300-something for a new version of it to see if it has been revised. Probably not since 20, 30 years ago. But I would just like for y'all to consider changing the policy if possible in order to, I have a big truck. If another big truck comes or if a car comes, somebody's got to stop. I don't care what you say about having 12 feet clearance. It doesn't work. So I would appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming today. Yes, Commissioner.
I can hear you, Angie. And congratulations, by the way.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question.
Yes.
Been asking, that works, but this one doesn't. I don't know why. Are you asking for us to modify, it is before us today.
Okay.
And so is your, I appreciate you bringing to our attention that you have concerns about it, particular to the width of your vehicle and people passing. What is it specifically that you are asking us to consider? That we revise the policy, that we make that, so
Yes,
could you
revise-
clarify what you're asking, please?
It would be, and when I signed in, it was not clear whether you were actually going to be visiting that today. So she put me down for the just general comments. Allowing no parking on that stretch is what we need. And there probably are other streets that are in similar situation. When that regulation was made, there weren't big trucks. There weren't people driving vans. There weren't people driving SUVs. And it is not safe. I mean, I have passed just on a regular street in Edgefield on Fatherland. And if there was a big truck and I was in my big truck and I was over as far as I could because there's somebody parked here, somebody parked there, our rearview mirrors would hit. So that's what I'm asking you to consider, that you revise the policy.
But again, revise it how? Just respectfully, I'm unclear on
understand.
what you're asking.
Allowing no parking
Okay,
because there isn't enough room for two vehicles as large as they often are now. And it's also, you know, if a fire truck tried to get through there, they wouldn't be able to make it.
okay,
If an ambulance tried to get through there, they wouldn't be able to make it.
okay. I appreciate, I think I understand you better now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, I think everyone else who wants to speak is here for a particular item on the agenda. So thank you for coming. The next item is approval of the consent agenda. Please note that items on the consent agenda are usually considered at one time unless they're asked to be removed. Commissioner Woods.
I'd like to request that we remove item 403.
Okay, can you make a motion? You made a motion. Is there a second to that motion? To remove item 4.03 from the consent agenda and consider separate.
I'll make a second.
We have a first and a second. Are there any other items on the consent agenda requesting removal or change? Yes, council member.
This does work now. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I would like to remove item 403, please, Sharondale Drive. Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. I was looking at the numeration incorrectly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a first and a second on 4.03. All in favor? Yes.
Is there I know before we vote, is there an opportunity to ask a question, or is that after,
We can ask questions. Yes, sorry, I was moving quickly.
before, after
Yes.
second?
Yeah.
I'm just curious why we're removing it from,
Commissioner Woods?
I've got some questions for staff, if I could, about that.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, so we have a first and a second. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? No. All right, we'll consider that after we do the other two items. All right. Item 4.01 on the consent agenda is a mandatory referral 2023M011AB001 Limeral Road row abandonment requested by Kimberly Horn. And item 4.02, unnumbered alley row abandonment requested by property owner and council member O'Connell. Any questions, discussion? Otherwise, we'll move to approve. Is there a motion to approve? We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. 4.03, Commissioner Woods.
So I wanted to ask staff, are we proposing to lower the speed on Sharondale to 30 miles per hour or 25?
It's 30 miles an hour.
I'd like to propose 25 if you really want to get people to slow down on that street, from my observation.
They're going to be going slow. They're going to be going slower than 25 because we have cushions that are coming in on that street. So the consistency I'm trying to keep with the speed limit is actually related to Major Street Collector Plan, and the recommended speed limits for collectors are 30 to 35. So instead of, the local streets are now 25 in most places. So just to avoid confusion with local street speeds versus collector speeds versus arterial speeds, I just want to try to keep that. But it is going to get traffic calming, vertical measures, cushions, so the speeds will be managed on that street.
There are no sidewalks, and I don't
Yeah.
know if the city of Nashville will ever do that. It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
People think the four-way stop at Woodlawn in Sharondale is a suggestion, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But there's a school there and everything else, so I just request 25 observations. Defer to not Vice President, Council Member Henderson.
My concerns were similar to Commissioner Woods. I'm so glad that we are finally addressing Sharondale. That has just been a long-standing, dangerous cut through. And the fact that that street was ever signed for 35 miles per hour is just pretty ridiculous, I think we would all acknowledge. Because it does read or feel, because of the width of the right-of-way, very much as a local street. The homes are very close to the street. And so I'm glad to know, and that was my question, I was wondering if traffic calming were coming to that street. I also wondered on the opposite side of Hillsborough Pike, so to the east, is that Stokes Lane? Lombardi, thank you, I apologize. And so Lombardi already has traffic calming measures, and I wondered for continuity, what is that signed as? Is that signed as 30 miles per hour, or is it signed as 25? Yeah. So, I can appreciate how we're in a space of saying, because this is a collector street, it's 30 miles an hour. But fellow commissioners, I've articulated previously that I think we also need to be kind of context sensitive, because we have things that are marked as collectors, but they're 2 lanes and they're very narrow and they feel like local streets. And thus 25 miles per hour feels, in my view, right on Sharondale. And so I would support this at this time, but just wanted to have on the record that I think we need to be moving towards, either 2 tiers are collectors, when we have 2-lane collectors. I appreciate we're bringing traffic calming to those, and to Commissioner Woods' point, kind of getting us to a place where we're moving to 25 on some of those. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I've got a question for staff. Jason, was this request put in by a resident, by the school? But how did this come up?
How it came up, it was selected as a traffic calming project, and we originally thought, or the consultant thought, it was posted at 30 miles an hour, and then when they actually did the field investigation, it was 35. So 35 would kick it into another category outside of our program. So we did do a speed study, and it definitely warranted lower speed. So we just went ahead and made that, recommendation to you all.
And then my next question for staff is, historically, when we have a major intersection and you've got a school that's perpendicular to the major intersection, is there a specific speed limit that is enforced, like 25 when you have a school like that on a local street like that, or is it just based on the speed calming study?
So with schools, school zones, I think Tennessee code is 15 miles an hour. It's not always posted 15 miles an hour. You'll see 20, 25 in different places. A lot of times that is due to the high speed of the roadway and just the fear of a high speed differential causing rear-end crashes. So sometimes you won't always see the 15 miles per hour, but that is in Tennessee code.
Okay. So right now, the entire street coming in from Hillsborough on Sharondale is 35, and we're asking it to be 30. That's the recommendation, but I would like to make a statement that, I would support 25, knowing that there's a school there right off the major intersection. That would make sense to me, especially if we're saying that it's supposed to be 15 and it's 35. That sounds pretty logical to me.
Mr. Chair, is it
Yes.
appropriate to make a motion
Yes.
to amend it to 25, or do we need to hear from our director
You
first?
can trump me.
Yes. I
Another
think
adjective.
it's clearly under our purview, right, Ms. Costonis? It's clearly under the authority that if we could lower it to 25, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just make sure we're legal. All right. Director Alicorn, if
Thank
you
you
want to
very-
speak to this matter too, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. For a point of information, in our budget, surplus budget, recognizing that nowhere in the city do we have school zones appropriately marked, we had requested dollars as part of our Vision Zero to actually look at starting to go through this entire county and actually do appropriate marking for school zones. So council did approve that. We're looking to get those supplemental dollars in January, and we'll actually be implementing that. So I just wanted to share that out, that we are looking to put that pavement marking down showing school zones should be a 15 mile per hour. Since that was a point of conversation, I just wanted to share that out. Thank you.
That's great news.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that's just all schools in general, not just
So-
public schools.
We will be starting with our public
Public schools.
schools first, and then we'll be expanding it out. Something else that council did give us this year was also a new program for striping. However, there are some focus that we need to do first, and then we'll be able to expand on that. But so in January, when we get the supplemental dollars, we'll start on those school zones and continue to expand it out. But this is going to allow us to do a big bang quickly.
That's great.
Yes,
Thank you for
thank you.
sharing that with us.
So Commissioner Woods, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that Sharondale from Woodlawn Drive to Hillsborough Pike, speed be reduced to 25 miles an hour.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is 5.01, an appeal of new parking restrictions on Bridgecrest Drive requested by homeowners. And I think Councilmember Stiles, you are here as well. Yes, hi, welcome. So we'll let staff speak first, and then we'll let the council, we'll let people speak in whatever order y'all decide. Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a slide up for this location. I believe the original request was for the entire street, Bridgecrest Drive. I think there was a petition that was started that didn't get all the votes for the whole entire length. So we looked at the widths and we compared it with the new policy. The greater than 30 feet would require the petition, but less than, less than 30 would provide some options for signing without the petition. The width here at this location towards the end of the street, Bridgecrest, is 23 feet wide. So if you have parking on both sides of the road, you're only left with like 7 feet, which is, I mean, there's small cars, but then there's really, really small cars. So we did allow signing on one side of Bridgecrest, and I think it's challenging sometimes to figure out which side to sign, and so it's a tough call.
All right. I know there's some people, who's here to speak to this item? Please raise your hand. You want to step forward, please? Speak. You would state your name for the record and then limit your comments to 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, my name is Fernando Reyes.
And I'm Tremaine Ricketts.
Okay, I measured the street and I measured 2611, so I don't know why it's 23, but anyway, I want to know if everybody has this.
We have a letter from the HOA board that was supposed to be emailed to everyone to inform them that they were kind of unaware of the situation that was going on. I currently live at 1752. He lives directly next to me. And as for the no parking signs on one side of the road, it has pretty much become more of a hassle than it is a help. Because now we have residents that have extra cars and they have nowhere to park. Or if I have visitors that come over, they have nowhere to park. And the current, I guess, option was told to us as for to park inside the common area. Now our community has grown. I have a picture of when I first moved to this community and there were no houses. So I've seen everything come and go. I've seen garbage trucks. I've seen firemen come and service the fire hydrant in my yard. So I don't get an understanding as of how is this helping if we have nowhere to park currently, because all those common areas are gone now. So for me to park maybe a block and a half down the street, or my son when he gets old enough to drive and get off of work, I mean, how is that going to help the community as for it being no parking on one side? Because you're actually cutting it in half as for the parking that was already available.
Thank you. Speaking. Yes.
Yeah, now I know the person that is requesting for these signs is our council, Joyce Stahl, but it's because she lived there. She's been doing a lot of stuff that is only in her favor, not on the favor of the community. So you guys have to put this on mind because it's just for her. She can do parties, she can do birthdays, but we can't because there is no way to park.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for coming to speak. Appreciate it. Councilmember Stiles, did you want to speak to this matter too, please? Yes, yes.
Before the councilwoman speaks, may I ask a question? How did you all find out about this?
Okay, they put the signs first, and we received the letter 2 days later.
Yeah.
We have proof of, we have pictures of everything that she's been doing.
The signs
So-
were placed in the yard July 6th. The letter actually came in the mail July 8th. It was dated for the 30th. So we were pretty much blindsided and unaware of the whole decision in general. No one came and asked us, or no one sent any letters or even knocked on our door about the situation. And as for in the letter that we have from the HOA, it states in there as well that no one was aware of the situation that was going on, or no resolution to the situation.
And this letter that you speak of on the 8th, who did that come from? Who's that letter from? From the,
Yeah, from the Metropolitan Government of Nashville.
okay, so I thought, okay.
Mm-hmm. And that was after, yeah, we received it on the 8th, it's dated for the 30th, we received it on the 8th, and the signs were in the yard July 6th.
So I have a question for staff. What is our normal, when we do make parking changes, how many days notice do our residents supposed to get?
That is a really great question. I don't know if we always do that. I think definitely when there's safety issues involved. I know in other jurisdictions I've worked, we didn't always give notice at certain restrictions when there was crashes or something like that. We just went ahead and put it up. But Andrew, did you? Andrew's in the back. Sorry. Andrew Smith, what's the typical timeline for letters? Parking restriction letters?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear you completely in the back.
The letter that went to the community about the parking restriction, we typically try to do 2 weeks in advance of signs being installed. Is that correct, or?
This is an unusual circumstance. Normally, we haven't
We
had
don't
to
sign,
send
I
out
mean,
a
we don't
letter
send a
for
letter
that.
typically, but.
I've got a question first.
Usually, there's not a letter that's sent out when we sign a road for no parking.
Okay. Code doesn't require it? Okay.
No.
I'm just curious, because I'm looking at this map that was up on the screen, and I'm seeing that this neighborhood has multiple cul-de-sacs that, you have the one at the end where you see 23 feet, and I'm just counting there. There's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see the one that shows that's 30 feet. I'm sorry, that's that street, that's Bridgecourt. But, so when we do this kind of stuff, do we go and we look at the other sections, or we just kind of take the request and do that specific street? Because it seems a little bit weird to me that we would just do one street when there's opportunity to look at a handful. Does that make sense, Jason?
We get thousands of requests, so we typically don't go above and beyond on certain things just because of manpower.
Let me jump in here, please.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
correct.
In this particular case, thank you, Mr. Chair. When we did receive the quest, we actually did go out and measure all of the streets in the area to determine if there would be more than one that we would have the situation where it would be tight. And again, our purpose is to leave enough space open for emergency vehicles such as an ambulance, a fire truck. And so in this case, with the 23 feet and with cars parked on both sides, we were left with 7 feet and a car could not get through. As to notices being sent out, a notice was sent out. If you noticed on that prior thing, there was a HOA meeting that was tried to be called on June 26th that also involved us as well as the councilwoman so that we could talk with the neighborhood. That meeting did not happen. Staff did show up, but we immediately stopped it because the plan was for the meeting to happen and then they would actually do the installation of the signage based on engineer's best recommendation following our policy. So we did stop it. We had another HOA meeting with the community and with the councilwoman, and then after that we proceeded forward. The question we did raise is which side we did give them a choice of which side they wanted on. We never did receive anything. So again, staff using best engineering practices made a decision and proceeded forward. We did send out this design so that they would understand where we would be placing the signs. So we did try to get some communication happening, but there was a misstep in the first HOA meeting, which was supposed to happen on June 26th. So I just want to point it out. But typically, anytime we're doing some type of signage new, that's going to change what people are used to. We try to give at least a 2-week notice with the letter going out. So excuse me, I just wanted to pop in and say that.
Okay. Any other yes, Councilman.
Yeah, I guess I appreciate that clarification, Director. I think, I think it would be helpful for us as a commission and a staff if we do say that, I recognize there are emergency circumstances, and then, we have to leave some things at staff discretion, and then, kind of tearing down from there what kind of the process is. But I think to the extent that we can be very clear on what the expectation is. And I think also just in our communication, if we say that we're going to put up a no parking sign, that it's very clear by form in that letter why we are doing that, right? It is very specifically for insufficient right-of-way for emergency vehicles, and then to contextualize it for the larger community, right? That we have looked at all the cul-de-sacs in this community. We find that, among the 5 cul-de-sacs, this is the smallest one. This is why this cul-de-sac is signed. I do want to bring to the commission's attention something that I've brought to planning staff's attention and NDOT staff. Historically, colleagues, it is confusing to me as a council member who serves a district. GSD, USD, HOAs, subdivisions. We adopted a lot of streets for public maintenance internal to HOAs that I'm not sure why the city adopted. And so we have a lot of public streets that are kind of up in subdivisions that I think create a lot of confusion around the role of the HOA board, the council member, the department. And I have shared, colleagues, at some juncture, I think for us to kind of get a handle on what that is and have maybe with the Neighborhoods Resource Center or otherwise some conversations about that would be helpful. Because I think we as council members never want constituents to feel, there might legitimately be a safety issue on a street that we reside on. And we never want our constituents to feel that, we're asking for something special for that street, right? We always want to be sure it's contextualized and framed around a legitimate safety concern. So I just wanted to articulate that in response to what Director Alarcon said.
Thank you.
Because quick question, these are considered public streets, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. They're not a private street under the documents.
We check that first before we even go out there.
That's what we would do, but.
We check those first.
All right, thank you.
Can I have a question?
Councilmember Stiles, are you ready to speak? So. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Commissioners, for your time. So to give some full context on the street, I do live in this cul-de-sac. I previously served on the HOA in 2018, and at the time, we had a conversation about safety, vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, with both sides of the parking. It was hard for a truck to potentially get through. We voted as a board then, as an HOA, to shut down the right side of the street parking. The neighbors on that side did not want to be inconvenienced with the parking, so pushed against it despite our voting on it. I then became council member, and I had to call a fire truck because one of the developers lit materials on fire across the street and left the house. So I called the fire truck to come. The fire truck got stuck. It could not come down. It could not come into the cul-de-sac and turn around. It had to back up. So what I was concerned about previously did ultimately happen. So I called and asked them to come out, and I got I asked for a petition first for shutting down the side of the street. That street, the bottom half belonged to 28 until this election, and then my side belonged to 32. So I had been told by Public Works at the time. I could do a petition for no parking on one side of the street. It had been something that had come up with multiple homeowners on my side of the street that they would like no parking. So I had taken a petition on my side. I got signatures for that side and then was informed, once we created the new department, that it had to be both sides of the street. So then the conversation began again. I asked them if they could measure, and they let me know that the parameters were, if it was under a certain amount of feet, it qualified for safety purposes for it to be shut down by the city. So that's why I requested for the no parking signs. And in the phone call that we had, my request was for from Mulberry Hill Place to the opening of the cul-de-sac. The HOA members on the call asked for the entirety, to be fair, they asked for the entirety of the cul-de-sac to be shut down for parking. And so and the no parking signs were installed, and that's where they are right now. So it is for safety purposes.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Just for clarity, so it was requested for the entire subdivision or? Please
Just
clarify.
Ridgecrest, our subdivision has 2 HOAs. There's the HOA for the front and there's an HOA for the back. So the request was for Bridgecrest Drive, which the majority of it belongs to the back HOA. So that's why the petition was being done on Bridgecrest and not anywhere else in the subdivision. Those that are in the other subdivision can put in requests on their own, and we don't really communicate in that way about what we're putting in for. To your point, it would make a lot of sense. I would love for us to be under one, but people want to stay separate.
So it was requested for all of Bridgequest. How did it just get focused on this cul-de-sac individually?
So I went down Ridgecrest Drive up until where our subdivision section starts. I got signatures from homeowners that wanted no parking or didn't want no parking. I turned that in. That's when I was told that it had to be both sides of the street. It couldn't just be the side of the street that was in my district. This is last year, but go back to 2018 when I said I served on the HOA. That's when we originally had the conversation about shutting down on-street parking for the purpose of safety vehicles being able to get down. It was not enforced. After I was off of the board, it wasn't enforced. So when I did the petition, I then asked about getting the cul-de-sac measured because I had the issue with the fire truck. The exact situation I wanted to prevent happened. So because I knew it wasn't being enforced by the HOA, I reached out to NDOT and asked them to come and measure and see if we could shut from Mulberry Hill Place down just on that one side. And that was the original section, by the way, in 2018 that we had voted on to shut down, just from Mulberry Hill Place to the beginning of the cul-de-sac. So emergency vehicles would have been able to come in and turn around.
So, one other question.
Yes.
Where is, so the no parking, you mentioned a place where everybody was designated to park. Where is that located?
If you actually look at that map that's on the screen right now, it's that empty lot that's up the street where it's one car parked in front of it. If that makes sense. It's like right above your head. Yes, sir.
On the street there in the lot?
Yep. And currently we have, like I said, the neighborhood has been growing. So during the day and even at night, I have pictures as well to show that common area is already blocked and parked up. So where are we supposed to park? The people that actually live in that cul-de-sac who was actually affected.
Well, I guess I wanted to understand that location just because of accessibility, because it looks as though the sidewalks stop the third house up in that cul-de-sac. So getting from that parking lot to those 3 houses, you're gonna have to cross the street, I would assume, or?
Mm-hmm. And have to cross the street, that's about maybe 6 houses down from where we live. And as for any firemen coming and not being able to get through, or ambulance or anything, I've never seen that happen. And I've been living there for 15 years before any of those houses were built. And if it was a day that they probably couldn't get through, it might have been these days where there were a party on our street by our neighbor to where the street was completely taken up by guests. But it was okay for the guests to park that day, but it's not okay for us residents to park today. I don't understand.
All right. Commissioners, any other?
Yeah, I got a question for staff. I see that the recommendation is to consider the appeal of parking restrictions on this Bridgecrest Drive, so as to remove the signs. That's the recommendation. Jason?
No, I think it really just to hear from those who are appealing the signs that we placed and for you to determine to leave them or to remove them. I think that's ultimately your authority.
All right. Do you have a question?
Yes. I make a motion to remove the signs.
Yes, please.
We have a motion to remove the signs. Is there a second to that motion? There is no second. Okay. Question for staff.
Chairman,
Yes.
we would like to, I believe,
No, I'm fine.
Director's
Okay.
got a comment.
No, I
here
mean, my
to-
question concerns that this street goes from 30 feet to 23. And my question is, when planning is done, plans are submitted by the developer, what kind of review goes through here to ensure that, particularly if this is a public street? Because if it's a private street, the HOA can regulate it. So, and that's their problem. But as a public street, it becomes the city's problem if it goes from 30 to 23 and there's not the appropriate standards put in place. So my question is, how's that vetted at planning, et cetera, please?
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for that question, because that is really the root of some of the issues that we're finding throughout Nashville. So maybe perhaps not in the past, but today, if someone's coming through and building a new subdivision, they have to provide actual blueprints that are showing the specification of the width of the roadway to make sure that we could allow parking to happen on both sides. And we have set specifications that are required to be built in new subdivisions. I will say in the past, perhaps it wasn't specified or it wasn't followed, but I will assure you now, when we are doing reviews, which I have development staff that is actually reviewing, they are looking at actual sites. There is specifications of the width of the road, the width of the cul-de-sac, sidewalks are required, even street lighting is required, because most of the subdivisions are in the GSD and not in the USD. And so we are requiring that all now as it's coming through the planning development. So we do look at the right-of-way as a whole to make sure that we're not going to have these types of issues when we move forward. But I will say in the past, perhaps they weren't looked at as closely as they are now.
Thank you for answering.
No, I appreciate the question very much.
Okay, well, as a person in the management of the HOA business, I can speak with firsthand experience the problem of this. So is there a motion?
I had another question.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing that we're kind of at a crux of a situation here where we have kind of two sides. But what other things or creative things could we do to maybe appease both sides to kind of remedy this parking situation on the street? If I know I'm just asking off the top, but what could we do creatively to try to solve this problem?
You could turn the undeveloped lot into a parking lot. That could help. I think the width of the street is, I think everybody wants a fire truck to be able to reach them. Okay, so I think if you're in the cul-de-sac, you're going to probably want no parking on one side or the other. Because if your kid's choking, and I've had ambulances respond to a situation where one of my kids was hurt. So it's like, it's tough to sometimes make both sides happy. But
So if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Director.
what we could do to reach a compromise is actually expand the cul-de-sac so that we have more than 23 feet. But in order to do that, right away would have to be given to us. A capital budget would need to be set up, and we would then be spending funding on expanding just the cul-de-sac and the right-of-way. that's a big expense to put forth to try to find a compromise. But that in essence is what it would take. You know, I just have to really emphasize the public safety. This is going to be a problem we're having in multiple areas throughout the city and the county right now. And we are looking at it more so than we ever, because this has become a challenge for the fire department. They are coming to us and say, hey, we're having a problem getting to here because there's cars parked on both sides. And so we're going to be doing this in a lot of locations. We are doing this. So I would just prepare y'all to hear much more of these types of conversations occurring, because it does come down to public safety. And as we are finding these streets, we're measuring everything within the neighborhood. We do want to try to be fair to everyone. We're not trying to penalize, but we want to make sure that the public safety vehicles can get at any time, at any circumstances, to someone's home in case of an emergency. And that is at least a 14 foot is really the right fit. You can sometimes squeeze 12 feet, but we have been having those conversations pretty regularly with the fire department. So it really does come down to a public safety issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Stiles is kind of threw this back at the council.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate, the request for this was based on safety. I do have a picture of the fire truck that came and was stuck and did have to back up if I needed to share that. But it is a concern, and the point that Director Alarcon just made it's very valid. And if that was a situation where they were trying to get into the cul-de-sac, they would have gotten stuck. I'm grateful that it was just someone being negligent in burning materials. It could have been far worse.
All right. Thank you. All right. Commissioners, is anyone going to entertain a motion on this item? There was no second.
I would move to retain the signage as it is.
We have a motion to deny the appeal. I think that would be the correct thing. We have a motion to deny the repeal. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. No second to that motion. Okay. Is there a, yes?
Chair, I was just going to say, I think the hesitation from the commission, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it does seem like an unfair situation, but at the same time, it's a public safety issue. So, you know, I think knowing that this is going to continue to be a pretty trending topic in the near future, we've got to be able to come up with something better than a large capital expenditure or, you know, unknown parking signs on people's private driveways. So I don't know if we want to table this and chew it over, or because I don't personally believe I'm in a position to. Obviously, I believe in, and I've had ambulances come to my house, so I know the importance of it. But at the same time, there's also a lot of cars that park on my street as well. You know, so I feel like there's got to be a fair compromise here in this situation.
So if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If you would notice in your packet, we did provide you our policy that we've actually have established for the department. So without taking a position either way, we actually have established that if something is between 20 to 23 feet, we do allow parking on one side and then no parking on the other. So no matter what, those are the conditions in which we are going to move forward with. So from a public safety, which we do, and based on best engineering practices, we are going to move forward with those policies because that is in the best interest of the entire community. So again, it can allow for parking on one side and then no parking on the other. So it might be the community might want to go back and revisit about removing some of the signs in the cul-de-sac because again, it's parking on one side and not on the other, and we're more than happy. Just as a point of reference and note, we do not put any signs on anybody's private property. They all go within the right of way. Just want to point that out as well. So we are going to continue to follow through on what our policy has established because this is best for the public. But we are willing to work with the community if they would like to look at removing some of them in the cul-de-sac because again, based on the 20 to 23 feet, it's one side is no parking and one side can be parking. And we can work on the community with that and also through the council member.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, it sounds like to that point, do we have, based on this being a public safety issue and the policy that we have in place, is it our position to be able to rescind this and or advise that the parking signs stay or be removed? It sounds it's pretty fixed based on the public safety issue and the policy that we have, that is something that's out of our hands.
Legal counsel, what's the advice concerning, I guess theoretically, we could always rescind our own policy, correct?
It's a little trickier than that. So it is, there's a code provision that's referenced in the policy as well, 1240.070, that provides for the 20 feet and the 30 feet references that you see, and essentially places it in NDOT's discretion to determine in those situations whether with 30 feet there should be a removal of one side of the street parking and with 20 feet there should be a removal of both sides of the streets parking. I assume that they are looking for NDOT to make that decision using like best engineering judgment and the MUTCD and all of that.
Yes.
So we certainly couldn't change anything that is actually in the code itself. The charter does say that places where parking shall be prohibited entirely or only during certain hours is at the discretion of this commission. So there's perhaps a little bit of inconsistency there. But I mean, I think that while this commission has a lot of authority, like doing things consistent with engineering judgment and engineering standards, just from an avoiding liability and enhancing public safety perspective is desirable.
Thank you.
Chair,
Council member, yes.
Point of clarification. I don't think maybe when we were establishing this commission and charter and everything, we were contemplating cul-de-sacs maybe in subdivisions. And so kind of like the both sides of the street thing, like which side is the side when you're in a cul-de-sac? And so is the concern in the community that it's the full entirety of the circumference of the cul-de-sac? And could this then, to Commissioner Adams' point, be kind of mediated by saying, well, let's just do it on part of it?
Council member Stiles.
Thank you, Chair. To go back to the conversation that was had with the HOA, by the end of the conversation, the HOA requested that the cul-de-sac have no parking signs placed in them. My request was only from Mulberry Hill Place to the entrance of the cul-de-sac. So when they asked me about, well, where will people park? Will they come in the cul-de-sac? I referenced our personal parking policy for the HOA, which is that each house is allowed 6 cars, 2 in front of their house, 2 in the driveway, 2 in the garage. So they mentioned, well, perhaps people are going to park around the corner. I said, well, that would be in front of people's individual homes. So that is why they told NDOT that they wanted the entire cul-de-sac to be shut down for no parking, in addition to the street, or that one side of the street on Bridgecrest between Mulberry Hill Place and the entrance of the cul-de-sac. And I will say that I'm about to go down the other side to ask about the street parking because it is something that has come up before.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioners, we have had 2 motions that have not had a second. Is there, the option is we can defer it for consideration at the next meeting, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would like, just clarity, I guess I just don't understand how, based on this policy, and the public safety issue, this is, we have the ability to say no to the signs, even though it's a public safety issue, which does not seem right. or consistent, or it just doesn't make sense to me. So I guess
I think the question is, why is this on the agenda, Alderman?
respectfully, yes.
Yes, okay.
And it sounds like staff went out there, measured the street. The width of the street warranted no parking based on public safety, but, it says, 20 to 23 feet, two-way traffic, no parking, right?
On one side, yes, sir.
So again, I would defer back to staff based on whatever the decision, based on the policy is adequate.
Yes, staff.
Staff makes a recommendation to defer.
No, I'm sorry, I'm
No,
going to override
I'm
that.
just kidding.
If I can jump in, I think there is a right to have an appeal, so that's why it is before you. You are the board that if the community can bring something forward to appeal. Based on the policy, they have the right to have, and based on our policy, our recommendation is from a public safety perspective, best practices, engineering, MUTCD, also doing some peer networking, I want to say, benchmarking, thank you, I lost my words. We are recommending that parking be on one side. As the council member mentioned, when the HOA was having the conversation, they had made the request to us to make all of it. We can go back at this time, revisit with the HOA, see if they've changed their point. But as of right now, the direction we took was based on our conversation with the HOA board members and what we had recommended about being on one side. To your answer, Councilmember Henderson, if we were to come in and do this without having, the conversation, we would have done half of the cul-de-sac and left the other half open in the other side because we want to maintain a minimum amount of openings so that an emergency vehicle can get in there. But I think in order to be consistent with everyone in the practice and the tightness of the cul-de-sac, they felt it would be best that everyone actually remove their vehicle out of that, and that's why the board asked us to put up signs for all of them. So we would still stand pretty firm about the no parking sign remaining on one side, no matter what, for emergency vehicles to be able to access the road safely. And that's our policy, and again, based on best engineering practices, as well as I said, we did do peer benchmarking to verify what everybody else was doing. I am very familiar with these types of policies. They've been in every city that I've been in because the fire department, really, when they start having issues getting down a street, you're talking about life or death with someone, and that's a really tough thing to have a conversation with someone. And the liability of that alone over a parking space is a little bit more at stake than a car parking on the street. So I just want to share that out.
So, commissioners, yes, legal counsel.
Yes, I was just going to say, so if no motion passes, the status quo remains that NDOT has the authority granted to them under the code to make this decision at their discretion.
Okay.
And so that decision was made legally
Okay.
and would stand.
All right.
So if this commission takes no action, the result is the status quo.
So we could conclude our discussion and things would remain as they are today. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. So, all right. Okay. So, yes.
I'll take a run at a motion.
Yes. Make a motion, please, Commissioner.
So I'll make a motion that what staff has decided based on the policy and public safety stand, but that additional conversations with the local HOA and the community be had to further conclude if both sides of the streets is still warranted and to talk through alternate parking, considering the messaging and the notifications that went out could have been a little bit better. Is that fair motion?
So we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second to that motion. Okay. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Seeing none,
Is this motion for him to make the decision?
I interpret it that it would let the current situation stand with a request that they revisit it in I'm going to say internally or inside the homeowners association to determine any kind of modifications or changes they would like to make. Correct? That's okay. All right. So we have a first and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passed. Thank you. That was good discussion for an issue that looks like it's pertinent for the future. Okay. The next item is an authorization for a new traffic signal at Bell Road and Arbor Common Beechwood Terrace that's been requested by NDOT staff. And this is in Council Member Stouse's district. Councilman, okay, staff.
Correct. All right, so this location, it serves two private streets along Bell Road. We did do one staff analyzed one warrant that was fairly quick and easy to look at the crashes at this location. So it was a safety warrant for traffic signals, and it did meet that by a large margin. So we wanted to bring this to your attention for you to approve a signal at this location.
You say it doesn't warrant it?
It does.
Does meet warrants. Okay. Councilmember Stiles.
Thank you very much, Chair. I didn't realize this was on the agenda today, but I'm excited. I'm ecstatic that it's on here. I have been working on this traffic signal for the last year and a half. Between there are two apartment complexes. They've now merged into one. You can see where the blue tennis court is. Though that used to be two, that's now one. The trees below that you can't see, underneath there are two other apartment complexes. So I've been working with them so we could do this partnership with NDOT and with these entities to put this traffic signal in here. The traffic is going across 6 lanes every single day, and there's an accident almost every day of some sort in one of those lanes. So this would be a real benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Yes, Councilmember.
I had some questions now that we have a
Yes,
motion before us.
Right,
Okay.
we have a first and a second. We can have further discussion. Yes. Yes. proceed.
Okay, thank you. I guess my questions were just about Bell Road in its entirety and some of the challenges there, right, as a 6-lane road. Are there transit provisions on this street? Like, I just wanted to understand, like, when we look at the street in its entirety and what the challenges are, and you know, a lot of our constituents are wondering and concerned about upcoming capabilities through the Traffic Management Center to synchronize these lights and so forth. And so, you know, I know it meets the warrants based on crash history, and I appreciate that, you know, safety first. But I also wanted to ask, just from a fiscal perspective, also where else might you anticipate that we were going to do signals on Bell Road? And are there any kind of road diets or otherwise conceived for this roadway transportation? I just wonder if you could kind of give the broader context, please, before we make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. So much for that question because I have a lot to share. So we are actually working with WeGo on what we're calling a multimodal master planning initiative. And basically, it's not starting with new plans. It's starting with all the plans that have ever been done in the city. WeGo, InNext, our walk and bike, community action plans, everything, and kind of put them all together, layer them over top of each other, identify where we have duplications, repetitiveness, or conflicts that won't work, identify gaps as well, and also identify where our growth needs to be happening based on Nashville Next, so that we can put together an overall long-range plan to build out roadway networks the way we are, where we can look at maybe we have a road identified as a collector and it acts more as a local. How do we take it back to a local road where we can identify roadways where it is a collector or arterial and we need to look at improving the different modes? So giving Bell, and Bell is actually one of the streets that we have recognized that needs overall rehaul and rework. Since Global Mall's been purchased, that's a major investment that we've made as a city and a county. So we've actually have listed Bell Road with TDOT. TDOT has asked us for the top list of roads that we feel need to be looked at through the Modernization Act, and Bell Road is actually one of them that we added to it. And we'll also do that through our multimodal master planning initiative from a long-range perspective, so we can actually drive the design. So whether this is a transit-only corridor with transit priority, or it becomes a road diet, whatever it looks like, that is something we'll be doing in hand with the community so that we can come up with a list of our long-range projects from a transportation perspective, so we can build a balanced transportation system. So that's a lot in a short time, but we are working on that, and Bell Road is one of the roads that we actually have prioritized to the top.
I appreciate it. And just by way of follow-up, I guess my intent there is then, that master planning of the corridor, because I think we all are concerned over time, right? We see these sort of higgledy-piggledy bits and pieces, and we do this, and then we don't think about the larger plan. And when I see 6 lanes like that, there is so much potential for transit and otherwise.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I would not want us to put a signal in there that would preclude any other future intentions or, around dedicated lane for transit for for suggestions there.
And thank you for that, ma'am. Because if I could just add one more thing, because real-time adaptive signalization, which would allow for us to be tying all that into our traffic management system center, would allow us to actually look at more signalization timing. And also, if this is and becomes through our community outreach and this multimodal master planning, included transit-only lane, we would be able to add queue jumping that would give prioritization to the transit. So it's not going to preclude in the future, but what the overall master planning, multimodal master planning is going to do is actually going to give us a 20-year to 25-year kind of roadmap, every pun intended, about how to build out our transportation system. And before our department was put together, no one ever looked at that. It was kind of piecemealed, but now we are going in and we are doing that long-range review, and we're also going to tie it in based on a lot of input from the community so that we're building out what this community wants as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? Because we have a first and a second. Okay. Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The motion is passed. Okay. Thank you. Moving along, the next item is authorization for a new valet lane on the southwest side of 11th Avenue South, requested by Jared. Is it Cloyne? Okay. Hopefully I got that right. All right, staff.
Just quickly on this one, when we were looking at it, this was in the Connect Downtown study area. Probably a fault of my own. This moratorium, curb moratorium expired July 1st. We had a presentation at the commission meeting in June, and I did not get that extended, but we were requesting now for the curb moratorium to be reinstated until the end of September. We will have study recommendations available by then.
Okay. Thank you.
May I just ask a point of clarification?
Yes,
I'm not
ask
sure
a
if it's
question,
a point of
please.
clarification or point of order. Ms. Costonis, respectfully, I know that this curb moratorium having expired has implications on this particular matter, but as an agenda item, can we really take up the extension of that moratorium and kind of have it combined with this item particular to the valet request? It just seems like that might not be a proper combination.
I think so the changes to state law requiring really specific agenda items is specific to legislative bodies like council. It's not specific to boards and commissions like this one. It's not absolutely required that every item at a regularly scheduled meeting be laid out in the agenda before you can vote on it, but it is certainly a best practice. Just in terms of like, if people are interested and would like to come hear the discussion, then they know that's the day that you're going to talk about that, and so they can come do that. But could you vote on it? I think you could technically, legally, but I think it would be, it would probably be a better practice to go ahead and defer and allow it to be placed on the next agenda.
Okay, or potentially bifurcate the motion, like you could just address the valet stand and address the other things
Yes, because
separately.
there's one item on the agenda, and that's for valet lane.
I mean, you could defer that item.
Correct, Chair, but I think what
Yeah, no,
concerning to me was then the recommendation included
Yes,
something
no,
that was a whole nother order of,
I understand, and that would, to me, require a separate motion and a whole separate discussion. And I probably lean towards legal counsel. That seems to me best practice is to have it on the agenda. That's as chair. Okay. Are there any, okay, Director Alicon, question.
Thank you.
Because we do want to get to the person who made the request.
Yes. But if I could, Mr. Chair, just real quick before. So we are having some challenges, and when we have folks that are coming down and asking for things, we are asking till the end and we complete Connect Downtown. We did give y'all an update. We actually are getting ready to release the draft toward the end of this month or beginning of September, and then we want to have an opportunity to vet that with the community as well as new council members over the area that's going to be most affected and the new mayor. So we are kind of waiting on that, just to let you know otherwise. So that's why we are asking that you still consider the moratorium. However, I will share with you, I did go back and talk with staff and with our consultant about this area, if there was any conflicts or concerns based on where we're at in Connect Downtown, and there are not. So we are not objective to them getting this opportunity to go ahead and open the valet. They are trying to open it in line with their grand opening, which is in the next week. But we are having some conflicts in some other areas, and we're trying to have those conversations with folks about it and asking them to just wait till we have a chance. And so I think that's why we're saying we'd like to continue the moratorium, because we're having those challenges. But we also know this is not going to be conflicting with any recommendations that are going to be coming forward out of Connect Downtown. So we are not uncomfortable at all. If y'all would like to make a motion and move forward for recommendation in this particular case, we're more than happy to work with them, because there are no direct conflicts with the outcome or recommendation, or conflicts with recommendations coming out of the study. I'm going to get those words out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's hear from the applicants, please. Mr. Coyne?
Jared Cloyne with CBJ Valet Parking Systems, working with Joe Muir. We have been working with Joe Muir and their group for over 28 years up in Detroit. They have moved down here and we're coming with them. Looking at the site, it's a very easy site. It is all right-hand turns. Left-hand turns make us nervous. Right-hand turns will receive on the curb along 11th, proceed into the structure to park. When we return the car, we will go out the back side of the structure, make a right in the alley, a right onto Nelson Mary, and another right onto 11th. It's very, very easy to do, very little risk. I, as the owner of the company, I don't want risk myself. So it's pretty simple to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Oleg Bullet. I'm a partner in the business. I would like to add to what Mr. Cloyne said. I would like to emphasize that this restaurant is about 325 seats, and we foresee quite a bit of traffic coming through. So instead of just letting general public take left turns or whatever turns they might be wanting to take out of the garage, I think it would be prudent to allow Mr. Jared here, use some of the best practices they've amassed over 30 years of experience and try to at least, I understand there was some statements made in terms of there's this ongoing study about the impact of the valet in this community. I think it would be prudent to have a valet in place, at least for a limited period of time, to see how that contributes to orderly traffic in a neighborhood. But I will emphasize that we expect quite a bit of traffic coming through this location.
Yes.
Additionally, if I could add, at the very least, I would ask for a probationary period. Again, if your study revolves around traffic flow, why not include the very item we're speaking of, and maybe review this back on January 1st. I don't think a 30, 60, 90-day period might not give the true judgment. The restaurant could be super busy coming out of the gate and slow down, or vice versa, start out slow and end up busy. So I think a good 4-month period would be nice to look at.
Mr. Odom, this valet stand was granted, what's the expiration date anyway? Is it in December 31?
I think these are just 1-year annual renewals. We don't typically have a probationary period. I don't think that's even in code. So it's just a 1 year.
So yes, excuse me, I'm sorry, Teresa. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Annual renewals go out the first of the new year.
Okay.
So they would actually only receive and pay for the permit based on, we would prorate it for the rest of this year.
Okay.
And then there would be an opportunity to renew it next year. However, I think Teresa's going to speak to something about annual renewals, so I'm going to turn that over to her. But I just wanted you to know the timeline in which we send out the annual renewals.
Okay.
They go out in December to begin January 1st.
Okay, thank you.
No, I was going to say something different actually, which is, in the past, staff to this commission has on some occasions used their ability to just grant a lane closure permit for a limited area to be used as a valet stand on a temporary basis. And then, used that data to come before you and either recommend or not recommend the valet stand, but I don't know if that's something you all want to continue doing or not. But that may be what the applicant is referring to when he says probationary period.
All right, do you have something to add?
Yes, sir,
Director,
Mr. Chair,
please?
and I'll be very quickly. Very brief. We have done the lane closures if it was actually involving a valet that we really were not interested in providing valet parking because of the traffic conflicts it would create. And therefore, for their grand opening, we would actually do the lane closures to allow for that to occur, and then it would go away after approximately 10 days. But to give them the opportunity during their grand opening period and their soft to their hard, we would allow for that. That's not what we're recommending here. This is actually has a built out that they will pull into. It's out of the travel lane. And again, when we verified this with staff and the consultant, there's no conflicts with Connect Downtown at this time with any recommendations coming forward. So if we were to give it this year, we could review it at the end of the year before we renewed it again. And if there's a problem, we can bring it back before the board. But we do not foresee that at this moment.
All right, thank you very much. Is there a motion? Yes.
Chair, just
Yes.
one last question.
Yes,
So
Councilman.
now that we've kind of realigned the process, whether or not we're talking about Connect Downtown, but like a valet stand like this, and, I would remind colleagues that, Capitol View was a master plan community with, wider roadways and pullouts, and, I don't foresee any problem with this. And so, but with all of them kind of coming up for renewal at the same time, I do appreciate that we have that sort of touch point, and that's not necessarily presumed, but do you anticipate, Director Alarcon, that your staff will have the time to sort of aggregate any concerns or problems that have been seen that staff have identified, like when December comes up, whether this case, not calling you all out specifically, or others, that you're going to have kind of a touch point for review by staff before we just kind of summarily re-up all of them, and we don't necessarily acknowledge maybe if some of them have been problematic or could be fine-tuned, rather, not to withhold them, but just to improve them, say.
Yes, ma'am. And actually, we do plan on bringing that back before this commission, also with maybe some adjustments in the policy discussion as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. And can you remind us as well, Chair, what are we charging for this now?
So there is the fee is actually calculated based on the hours in which they're going to be working, the number of days they're going to be working, operating the valet, as also the number of spaces, and then what would be the revenue in the area that they would be, if we were to charge revenue in the area, what that would be, because we do have a set price for that, and then that's how we determine their parking, their valet permit fee. I will tell you,
with that adjustment that occurred, that actually went into effect this year. We've been having a lot of conversations with businesses. They've asked that we would look at that again. So there's been conversation to pull another task force together with the business community and have a conversation, and maybe and perhaps even bring some policy discussion back before this board, which we would do way before the new year so that we would be able to have that conversation. So we are looking at, as we are also looking at how well valets are functioning or not functioning, having that conversation of how we can all work better in the right of way, and that does fall into Connect Downtown as well. So a lot of that has been going on. So we, like I said, I do anticipate we'll be back before you on a policy discussion further for valet.
Okay, I appreciate that context.
Thank you.
May I make a motion?
Yes,
Chair?
you may.
I would move approval of the valet permit request at this location.
All right.
Just to clarify, it would be 2 spaces, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. is the recommendation if you did go with this, just so that we can base the fees from that, 7 days a week.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'd like to second it.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just one question.
Yes, ask away, please.
The circle was at ML Rose, but then the restaurant was across the street. Is
It's
that-
across the street. We have it indicated incorrectly, but we know exactly where it's going. It's in a good spot.
Great.
Thank you for bringing that out.
So if I may, the garage structure in question that we'll be using is actually our building garage structure. So basically the cars would just travel a couple hundred yards down the road and take a right turn in the garage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a couple left from that circle too, but no.
Yeah, thank you.
Chairman, I had a question.
Yes, ask, please.
Director, just, I know we haven't touched this subject in a long time, but I remember having some pretty lengthy discussions with other restaurateurs, which we were not able to comply with their request during the moratorium, during our impact study. My question to you is, are the applications open today to request valet through NDOT?
Yes,
Okay.
and because this was a big discussion internally among staff, because we did not get the moratorium extended, and I have a request coming through, I cannot say no. If there was a moratorium, I could say we're going to defer this until the moratorium expires. And so the ones we will be coming forth, but they haven't come back and asked for it, so we're ready. But I think, again, some conversations I've been having with some businesses have to do around the fee. And it's really the way it's being calculated. It's this year based on what was changed in 21 is, I don't want to say problematic, but challenging, and there's been some concerns and they've addressed it. And now that we've actually changed the hours of enforcement, because that's part of it as well, that's going to impact it even more. So again, that's why I think it's important that we regroup, have a business discussion with the business group, and have a task force discussion about maybe what are some additional best practices we can bring about and bring before this board for consideration in a policy. So we are trying very hard when someone comes through and we know it's a direct conflict with a recommendation coming out of Connect Downtown, we will tell the applicant this is in direct conflict, we are going to recommend no. And so a lot of them have decided to pull it off until we get done and through it.
With the study?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so that we've been fortunate with, but we are having challenges, and it's a very long talk. It's a nice negotiation talk, but we just cannot support something if it's going to be in direct conflict with the Connect Downtown initiative. But as I said, this one didn't have any direct conflict, so I was pretty comfortable with making a recommendation to move it forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion, questions? Okay, we have a motion that has a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been passed. Best wishes to you. Okay. The next item is authorization for a new passenger loading zone for 747 Fessler's Lane, Enos Reed Drive, requested by TAN Assets LLC. That looks like the recommendation is to defer.
Yeah, that is a recommendation. Also, all the items you see on your agenda, 504, 50601, 2, 3, and 4, our request for deferrals.
Okay.
If you wanted to do that now or as we approach those
Okay,
items.
we'll, let's do 5.04. Let's do them one at a time.
All right.
Okay. Is there a motion to defer, please?
Motion to defer.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 5.05 is authorization for a new loading zone at 509 Houston Street, and there's a request for deferral. Is there a motion? We have a motion to defer. Is there a second? We have a second. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. On 5.06, there's a whole variety of parking meter requests that have been made. I know Councilmember Cash is here. I know that you just mentioned there's a request to defer.
Yes.
But it seems like this may be a good opportunity to have a brief discussion concerning, as we do, if commissioners will allow, to hear from, I know the council member has several of these, and some folks have been waiting patiently to speak, but then also to have a brief discussion among commissioners and staff about, as we start to roll out parking meters to areas that have never had parking meters, what is kind of the process? Because I think some of these requests have maybe pointed out some process improvements, as they like to say.
Thank you, Chairman
Okay.
Green. And yes, this is a process improvement. So I appreciate that, setting that up. So we are asking that that 50601, 2, 3, and 4 be deferred. And the reason why is because these are areas where there is no current meters. And our process with this is we would actually have work with the Merchants Association first, discuss why we are recommending meters, and then based on that conversation, we would actually come up with some other recommendations coming out of it. So for example, in this particular area, we kind of jumped the gun. This should have not been on here. This is more my mistake, so I'm going to own this one. This was Diana rushing because what I thought this was actually in around, and I mixed it backwards around 21st and 20th and all that because I have had a walk with a council member, Cash, in that area. We have discussed what needs to be metered in that area, and I was rushing and I was seeing that and not what this was. And so we have not met with the community. We have not had a conversation. Before I would even put in meters in this area, I'd recommend time limits to help control the area, move it around, allow for the turns. I think that would be much more suited for this area. It would give the businesses more opportunity because what we are finding in this area is a lot of cars are parked long-term, which means they're employees. And if we were actually to put a time limit of 3 to 4 hours, it would allow for the turns to support the businesses and bring more business in. But again, we haven't had any conversation, so we need to. So the process, as part of our process improvement on this, is that if we are going to make any recommendations for areas that are currently not metered, staff will actually do all their homework and bring it to me. I will have a meeting with the council member before I even bring it forward. Based on that meeting with the council member, if they would think it would be safe to move forward, we would then set up a meeting with the area merchants or the area businesses to discuss about the businesses and what we have found, what we need, and what we recommend. Based on the outcome of that, and also with the support of the council member, then we would bring it before this commission. That was not happening. It is part of our process improvement, but that is how it will happen as we move forward. As far as what the process is for areas where we do currently have meters and we're looking to expand, maybe around the corner or something, we are bringing that before you as a recommendation to ask for expansion. Before we ever install meters or everything, we actually will do a community outreach and let folks know what we're doing. We'll give ample time for comments, conversations to happen. And then from that point, if there is a major disagreement, we will actually figure out what the next steps are. If there is no major disagreement, but some compromises, we'll find that and then we'll proceed forward. If it's all good, then we proceed forward. So that is how we have both of those two processes actually set up. The second one is actually set up very well, and we have been doing that as we have moved forward because most of our requests have been in areas where we currently have meters. And then the first one, as we had learned, we needed to do a process improvement so we wouldn't make this mistake as we move forward. So thank you for that opportunity, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Councilmember Cash.
Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate what the director said, and that helps me understand the process. And we've talked about it before, but that kind of answered some questions. I heard that the recommendation is to defer 1, 2, 3, and 4. I would also like 7, 8, and 9 deferred. 8 and 9, I would really like, and I've talked about this before with staff, that I'd like a discussion with merchants and the Belmont University, especially on 8 and on 9 as well, which is really just an extension of 8 and 9 are really two different parts. It's just a curve, and then there's the road is renamed. And then the number 7 is quite different. That's a area next to a park and some multifamily residential. It's also very close to a teacher center, which has lots of parking challenges. And they've got a stretch of 24th that's reserved for them during the day, I believe. And so I'd like for some community discussion about that as well, and that's going to be, I think, quite different from the other areas.
And Councilmember Cash, just so you know, we've also been working with some of particular businesses in the area, so we're more than happy to continue the conversation with them. We haven't been working with all of them, but we've been working with some of the music industry ones, so that's really kind of some of the driving. So if we want, we're more than happy to have a continued conversation and broaden that conversation. Make it larger. That's not a problem.
Sounds good. I know that there's...
Because this was driven by the request. It's good to have more business conversation.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
One merchant is here.
Yeah, we're more than happy.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Woods.
Thank you for the deferral. I think that's a great idea. And I wonder too, Councilman Cash, because of the park there, I know the great thing about that area is it's close to a big university, which also can make challenges, for residents and medical and all of that. But I'm hoping that as a grandmother who takes children to a park, that you all can come back with some kind of, I don't know, maybe Saturdays and Sundays. There's some flexibility around the park.
That's part of the conversation I'd like to have, yes. And yeah, I mean, I know now currently, because of the issue that you talked about with university, and it's not just the university, but the medical center, that parking is often not available there. And partly because of the teacher center that's just on the other side of the lot, or the square block. And we certainly want people to be able to go to the park. And that's why I said that conversation was going to be kind of different from the other ones that involved merchants and Belmont University.
Odd.
Chair.
Yes, council member.
If I may. So I appreciate hearing from the director about process improvements. And I think what I would speak to is council members understand their district at a granular level, what the pressures are on particular businesses and entities and patterns and presumptions and all these things. And so first and foremost, in my current role as a district council member and in my future role, I do want to make sure that is kind of the first step in the process, because that's going to help staff. Right? Council members understand, yes, and I just want to reiterate it, council members understand that nuance. That said, there's a lot about parking policy that is counterintuitive. And there are certain presumptions in this community about what should be free and what should not be free. And so I would also say to you, for purposes of council member onboarding and education, as we come into this new council term, I think we want to, for sure, because that'll be supportive of the work that you all do, commissioners, if there is that kind of understanding between council and commission and how this kind of works, because we're effectuating a pretty major change as a city with the introduction of paid parking. And then I would also share and suggest, I don't know to what extent the Chamber of Commerce and other entities, ULI and otherwise, are doing kind of some best practice educating around. So you have a merchants association, I presume, in 12th South. I have found historically, no disrespect to the chamber, but I don't think they have done a particularly good job in assisting and facilitating with some of our smaller merchants associations. And so I think there's a lot to be gained there around valet, on-street parking, working with the merchants associations and the council member to do the community education, level set on expectations. I just think we have so much opportunity here, but we just have to be well organized and intentional in it. So thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
I think the Councilwoman Angie should consider running for office. As someone who has owned a small business, you understand you have to provide for your employees, you have to provide for your customers, and if you're in a busy area, that's great in so many ways. So everybody knows that, and that's what we depend on. I see business members there, and I will go on record with you saying, no, we don't depend on the chamber for this. We're talking about Nashville local businesses. It's sort of different. So anyway.
Thank you. I also note Representative of Belmont University is here, Mr. Jason Rogers. No, personally, because Belmont's behind my house, so fortunately. And then that's the next is Mr. Bernstein, who owns Bongo Java at Fido's and several other well-known establishments, is here. I've been in both of those in the last week, by the way, Mr. Bernstein. So, but I think this is addresses to that because to the outreach. So. All right. So, according to my note here, Mr. Haynes, you were going to speak about 5.06. Are any of these 7 items part of the ones you were going to talk to? No. Okay. All right. All right. So, is there a motion concerning items 01, 02, 03, 04, 07, 08, and 09?
Motion to defer those items.
We have a motion to defer. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion of those 7 items? Okay. All in favor of deferral?
Aye.
Vote? No. We have a deferral. Thank you. And then, all right. And then the next item is we need to hear about 5.0605, Malloy Street from First Avenue South to Second Avenue South. And then we have 5.0606, which is Magazine Street from Division Street to a dead end. 06.10, which is Third Avenue South from Demonbreun to Broadway, which is says here outside existing loading zone hours, and 5.0611, 19th Avenue South from Chet Atkins to Division Street. So staff, can y'all provide some detail for these items, please?
So Jason, do you mind if I take that? Perfect, thank you. So let me start with item number Mallory Street from First Avenue to Second Avenue. There's approximately 2 to 3 spaces, depending on the size of the car, that can fit in this area. Currently, right now, we do have a lot of cars that park there for free. There is meter spaces in the surrounding area, so we are actually recommending that we add this to the meter inventory. This will operate on a 24/7. I've had several conversations with Mr. Hayes, and I'll let him actually speak to it. We've agreed to disagree very politely with each other on this approach, and I'll continue to agree to disagree with him. But in essence, there is some things we have agreed upon, so that is something to it. But we are looking for this to be parking 24/7 and it to mirror up with the parking meters that we have also in the additional area. Thank you.
Mr. Haynes, I know you're here to speak.
Sure. Hayes.
Haynes, sorry.
Hayes.
Sorry.
Michael
My
Hayes,
apologies.
Hayes, and it's Malloy.
That's the other question I was going to
Malloy.
ask, because I know it's Malloy Street from driving downtown.
Mallory's down in Key West. My apologies.
Malloy is named after Thomas Malloy, the first surveyor of the city of Nashville. I got to fight with Malloy family about 20 years ago when they wanted to rename it after their great-grandparents, and I had to explain to them the history of the street and why it had its name. As I said, my name is Michael Hayes. We have owned property on the street. Our family has since 1919. I've worked over the last 21 years with the city to straighten the street and given right-of-way up between 2nd and 3rd to rebuild the street. We built this section that you see in front of you between 2014 and 2017. This is 21 feet of pavement and another 7.83 feet that we developed as a loading zone. A valet zone. That's the area you see on the right where the NDOT car is currently parked. There's room for 2 spaces. And then the area, and I guess these are all compact cars, so you can see 3. We see cars often extend past the sign, which is the turn radius into our loading dock. I wanted to come and speak with you guys today because we've worked on a Malloy Street master plan for 20 plus years. We've built the right of way. And we worked on this as a valet zone. Our tenant that currently operated in the space on the right, just to the right of the car, decided to cease operating their business. We have 3 restaurants here, Hampton Social, Liberty Common. This was the Green Pheasant space. They operated a valet for about 2 years. They went bankrupt during COVID. When it was time for PMC to renew the valet permit, PMC did not renew because there was no tenant using it. Then there was a curb moratorium. So we didn't apply to utilize this as a valet area because there was a curb moratorium and there was no restaurant tenant. I'm delighted to say that about a month ago, after 3 years of work, we have re-leased the premises. And I anticipate that our new tenant will open a new restaurant on this corner, I hope next spring. And so wanted to just come and sit with you today to say, we do not oppose Metro collecting revenue. This is an area where there are no meters on Malloy Street from 1st to 4th. The MCSP does not call for meters on Malloy Street from 1st to 4th. There are no meters on 1st. There's no meters on 2nd immediately around us. So it's a new area for meters. And one of the questions that I asked the director was just, hey, are you all going to spend $5,000 to put a meter in that someone may come and ask to take out 6 months from now? Her comment was, no, it was a QR code and a sign. What I've seen here, I think echoes what she said, is that people, have been parking here all day. The people that I see that park here, for the most part, specifically earlier in the day, together with many of the areas further to the south, are construction workers, restaurant employees, people who can't or don't want to afford to park in a garage. We have an 1,100 car garage to your right. We welcome this becoming paid parking because if the rate's high enough, it drives people into my garage. That's a great thing. We've discussed also that I really fundamentally don't believe that the public right-of-way is a place, particularly in the urban core, to store a vehicle, right? It should be to move a car or to move people or for a bike lane. And so that I'm hopeful, particularly as this commission and our new mayor and council think about optimizing revenue, that we're sensitive if we sell the rights, which was contemplated previously, to a private contractor that would force us, for example, to sell rights to on-street parking when maybe we need it for transit or bike lanes or walking people. Right now we have an 8-foot sidewalk. To create this little valet loading zone, we took out planters. It's on top of district energy system lines, so we couldn't put trees here because of the steam. It would have cooked the root balls, and really the only thing we could have done is a wider sidewalk. So no objection to it, but just wanted to come and say at some point really soon our tenant will be back, and they've expressed this to the director that they'd like to operate a valet here, and I hope you will consider it because we built it to be such. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I'm not objecting whatsoever to the valet thought. And as I also shared with Mr. Hayes, with Connect Downtown, there are some recommendations that are coming out about the best use of the curb. And that was part of what we asked the study to look at. Sometimes parking isn't the best use of the curb, and we recognize that. And that's why we had that as built into the study. So maybe perhaps if a motion is made to allow us to make this paid parking, and we are planning on using the e-commerce and not a meter in this particular area, there might be a caveat added that when Mr. Hayes's restaurant comes to us with the request for a valet permit, we would be able to have the authority to move forward and provide them the valet permit, and maybe not have to come before this board, so we can move through that expeditiously, because we do not have a problem with it, but we do want to have better control of what's happening on the curb and on the streets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to have a separate motion for each item, Ms. Costones? It would appear that would be the approach.
Yeah, probably so.
Okay. I just want to clarify. That was my plan. Okay. All right. On item 5, on item .05, is there a motion? Yes, question. Ask a question.
Oh, I was going to make a motion, but.
Yes.
And we do questions subsequently, or?
Do you have
I defer. Okay. I was going to make a motion to approve on-street parking at this location, but with not permanent structure. Like it would just be signage, QR, e-commerce. I don't know to the extent we have to articulate that we understand that is likely for a temporary phase at NDOT's discretion until a valet stand is applied for. And I welcome colleagues to say that that's not a good motion, but that's my motion.
All right, we have a first.
I just wanted to be clear that if in the event they do apply for a valet, they can do that and it be considered.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would second that motion.
All right, so we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Oh, I apologize, Chair. Now that the motion has been made, may I ask a question,
Yes,
please?
you may.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just from a context standpoint, so Mr. Hayes had pointed out how, there is not on-street parking on Malloy presently or in the immediate vicinity, that there is a fair amount of structured parking. And so I want to make sure, I know sometimes we're doing this kind of iteratively, right? We're trying this little piece, we're trying that piece, we're trying to keep Connect Downtown in mind, we're trying to keep the moratorium in mind, we're trying to keep the Bikeway Master Plan in mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But is there a reason we are just talking about this segment and not the rest of the surrounding streets that he was speaking of?
So there is meters on Second, so there is some surrounding meters around there. And then the rest is that there's limited space that we could look at adding additional. So for example, we could over on Demumbrium, but there's some valets right now. We also have some over on First that we're working with right now. But really, this is where we have a pull-off. Parking's already occurring. So we wanted to go ahead and make it paid parking. Mr. Hayes has shared with me his concern about the restaurant coming in. I said we had no problem with turning it into valet because that was more of the long-term intent. And that also does serve, I think, the overall good of what we are intending to do when we talk about appropriate curb management.
Okay,
So
I just
it would
wanted
be
to clarify
it'd
the larger
short.
context.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Any further questions? All right. Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that is passed. Next item is 5.0606 Magazine Street from Division Street to Dead End.
Okay, so there is meters here, but not up and down the whole street. So we want to be able to come back and add. Right now, we have people that I lived in this area. This drove me crazy. When I first moved to Nashville, I lived in the Icon building right there, and I walked out this all the time, and it drove me crazy to just see the amount of opportunity that we were missing out on because people will park there. They park there all day long. They do park randomly halfway sticking out. It was very hard to maneuver sometimes on this street. So what we're asking for is really to create order to the chaos here. There's meter parking further back toward the street, toward 8th Overton, thank you, and then also on the west side of the street. So this will allow us to continue all the way up until it dead ends. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None. Okay, thank you. All right, and then we have 5.06.10, which is 3rd Avenue South from the Mulberry Inn to Broadway.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. Here we have loading and unloading that occurs from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. What we want to do is in after hours is turn it into parking. So we're not asking to remove the unloading, but after hours at 6 p.m. because right now cars parked there, there's no regulation and we're not gaining anything. So where we have the opportunity, we want to add the e-commerce and require parking to occur after the 6 p.m. hour. So that's what we're asking for in this particular case.
All right. So it would be after 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. the next morning?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
guess.
Yes,
Okay.
until 7 a.m. the next morning.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I have a question.
Yes, ask.
Just out of curiosity, is there specific time ranges to the loading zone? Is 7 to 6 a specific request, or is it a standard, or just?
So at one point, it was a request that was made for the business or whatever the area. I will tell you, as part of Connect Downtown, we have inventoried every single loading and unloading. We've also had multiple conversations with the businesses in the areas to understand what the need is. One of the recommendations that will be coming forth in Connect Downtown is looking at doing different particular areas of where loading and unloading zones will happen so that we can pull some back and maybe look at using it for different things, such as not necessarily on-street parking, but bike lanes, ride sharing, and then set up different times that we allow loading and loading to happen. So kind of tier it. So maybe in the morning when we want to make sure that we're not having double parking occur, which we do here sometimes on Demumbriam, we would actually say if you want to deliver between 7 and 11, you can come in and it's going to cost you this amount of money. But if you come in and deliver from 5 to 7, it's free. And we'll have actually monitored it. So there's going to be a lot of those conversations. At this point, we're not recommending making any changes because that'll kind of be rolled out through the implementation plan of Connect Downtown that will be forthcoming. So we have explored all of that. We will be bringing a lot of those policy conversations to this board for consideration as we move forward.
Chair.
Yes,
I guess if we're continuing with questions prior
Yes.
to the motion. So I guess I'm surprised to see this one just because of so much being put on hold, understandably, for Connect Downtown, especially with 3rd in particular. There has been a lot of interest and concern in the community about what will happen to 3rd. The previous plan was for a bikeway on 3rd.
Still is.
There was a lot of, community engagement and I think support for that, maybe north of Broadway. I always understood the south of Broadway segment to be a little more challenging because of the loading zones. And so I think I'm wanting, before we make a motion, to kind of understand, after we put so much on hold, why now? Why here? Because this area has always felt to me a little chaotic and messy as far as the crossing. And are we hoping to bring more order to this area again in sort of a temporary fashion as we discussed on Malloy? And can you just speak to that more, please?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the recommendation can go two ways. One, we could request that this be 24/7 unloading and loading so that we would not have the chaos in the area. What happens after 6 p.m. is people jam in there. And as was mentioned before, they overrun, they block sidewalks and crosswalks. So if we were to go in, either do paid parking, which would allow us to generate revenue until we actually can do an implementation of Connect Downtown, that'll generate revenue, which goes into the parking fund, which goes toward infrastructure improvement. So we felt like instead of making it unloading, it would allow us to bring order to the chaos. It allow us to generate some revenue until we actually had the implementation done and approved, and then actually move forward with whatever came out of the recommendation in Connect Downtown. So right now, the parking at 6 o'clock it happens, and they just jam themselves in there. They block the crosswalk. They create a lot of issues for us. So if we put it in where it's paid, it's going to provide some better direction. So we could either go all unloading, or we can create some revenue. I got a little selfish, and I went the side of creating a little bit of revenue that can go into infrastructure improvements overall for the city and the county.
May I ask a follow-up question, Chair? Okay, so I guess, my primary concern at this location, I mean, for a long time, there was a whole lot of sidewalk vending with really flashy, bright lights. So, I would take the bus downtown and try to go to the Symphony, and you could, it's like, where do I even cross the road? And the crosswalk was messed up with parked cars, I think, my recollection. So, when we're saying that in a temporary fashion, we're going to implement something like this, are we likewise also putting in vertical measures so that people will not block the crosswalk and there's sufficient sight lines? I feel like it's unclear to me at this juncture kind of what we are implementing from a best practice standpoint as to, where the signs are, where the vertical measures are. You can park, but when there's a crosswalk, I mean, have we set a standard that X number of feet off a crosswalk, we're putting vertical measures in there, we're putting some stuff, nobody can park there. I recognize that having paid parking affords us an enforcement opportunity.
Yes.
But will we likewise have some supporting infrastructure, please?
Yes, ma'am. We can definitely do that. That's actually a very good suggestion, so thank you for that. And as you know, we've actually enforced the sidewalk vending. That was actually something that this commission did. We've had some really good success with that. People have pretty much been very respectful and have followed that ordinance. We have not had much problem. We still do have some, signs that that are downtown and some of the vendors, but they're on private property. They're not within the public right of way. And we've actually made them move back. So any waiting or staging is happening on private property and not in the public right of way. That would block the sidewalk. So we've done a lot of that has really improved just the experience of walking in the downtown area. And then I think with the noise ordinance that's coming before council for final reading, that's going to help us actually do something with some of these vendors that are on private property to make them shut the noise down because they blare their music really loud, and now we'll be able to go on and say, actually, you need to turn it off. Your decibel's too high, or you got to turn it down. That's going to be another big win, I think, to just make it a much more comfortable feel in the street and on the sidewalk. Did y'all write that down, gentlemen? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion on this item?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to say I go to the street every day, Monday through Friday, and it's a nightmare.
Yes.
It really is. You got just too much going on the street. You got the pedestrian bridge, you got the Symphony, you got office space, you got tourism, you got restaurants, you got bars, you got Broadway. This is the biggest issue of a street, in my opinion, that intersects Broadway.
Yep.
It's a big, busy street.
Yes, I agree.
If Commissioner Adams is not going to articulate it, I'll say it. Maybe it should just be a bikeway and a closed pedestrian street. Just saying.
I look forward to sharing Connect Downtown with y'all very soon.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we have a first and a second. All in favor? Opposed? None. It has passed. Okay. All right. The last of these is Chet Atkins, 5.06.11, 19th Avenue South from Chet Atkins to Division Street.
Question, who's parking there all day? I mean, why is there not more turnover there?
I feel that this is made up of different types of folks. I feel some of it's residents that are not pulling in and paying to park in their own garage. It is also, I think, some of the folks that are coming in to do the buses, the entertainment buses are parking here, and they go and then they get off and then they stay downtown and then they bring an Uber over and get back to their car, but it's an all-day thing and it's not turning over. So we do feel like there's some opportunity to turn it over that would better support the businesses and would also help with just moving the street better than what it is today. This is a very interesting dynamic in the area as well. This is a little bit off the beaten path. We do have some meters a little bit further up on Division, and in that area, this is a little bit out. But I will tell you, I've seen many folks park their car, get out, walk over, get on an entertainment vehicle that's doing a pickup in a certain area, and then when I come back, and a few hours later, the car's still there, and I come back later, the car's still there. So I think it's that. I think it's also some of the residents that are actually using the street versus the garage. Because some of the residents, they're actually charging for parking in the garage. There's just a few of the residencies that have opened up where they're offering free parking. They're all charging. So I can park on street, I don't have to pay. And really, they need to be parking in the garage because we are requiring this great commercial aspect in our mixed-use development. And therefore, people are stuck going in the garages and they're paying, and that's the complaint we're hearing a lot of. So this will put them on street for that short-term parking and then move it over to and put the residents into the garage paying their monthly parking like they should be.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councilman.
Quick question. Whenever I see this much right of way, I'm like, what else are we doing in this vicinity? Is this part of Connect Downtown as far as like bikeways and neighborways and so forth? There's just really wide.
Division has a bikeway on it, so we're looking to extend it. So that will be a part of it as well.
Okay, so when we approve this on-street parking, I just want to kind of say that for the record, as we work to optimize our bikeways and safety and so forth, because we have not putting posts in the ground, right? When citizens sometimes see metered parking, then they get concerned that we might be doing something that precludes a future kind of multimodal solution. So
not at all. And that's why I really am looking forward to sharing Connect Downtown, because it really does look at the best use of the curb and parking. Sorry, gentlemen, parking's not always the best use of the curb. Even though I am a big parking fan, it's still sometimes not the best use of the curb. But while we can generate dollars, the dollars we do generate goes into the fund that supports future infrastructure improvements that we can make.
Okay. We had a first and a second. Yes.
So are these meters going to be like the kind of e-commerce type of deal?
There is a potential that we might put down one of the kiosks to get something in there just in case there's a failure. But we have that and we're ready to go. And that if this was to be, kiosks, first of all, are not that big of a deal to put into place. We can easily pick them up and move them around. So, and then reprogram to fit whatever is the dynamic or the hours of enforcement, the time, whatever, or even if we do a rate change and, in the future, we can adjust all of that based on what was happening in the area. But I would recommend in this area, because it's a little bit off, it is a little bit further and it's a little bit off the beaten path, that we do one meter just so that there's redundancy in case there's a failure in the e-commerce, because we do depend on, cell phones and, Wi-Fi and all of that stuff. And I don't know about y'all, but at times that doesn't work, especially when we have thunderstorms. But a kiosk will always work.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have a first and a second. This one, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank y'all very
Any
much. For your
opposed?
support.
Thank you. All right.
Jerry,
Yes.
I just want to revisit 505. I may have spoke too early on that to defer. That was one that needed actually to be considered for approval.
I think we did that one. Malloy Street?
Yeah.
What's the correct spelling?
No, I'm sorry, 505 Houston Street.
Oh.
This was a loading. I think that might have accidentally been deferred.
It did.
It
And
was
so-
deferred.
So that was probably a misspeak on my part because I was mentioning a handful, and I think you move to defer that one, but I'd like to revisit it if that's possible.
Houston Street?
Yeah, Houston Street was a request for a loading zone, and they do not have any other location to bring supplies, food in, and this fills up pretty quickly. So there was a request for a loading zone that we approved, or recommending for approval for hours of operation 8 to 11 and for 75 people.
Okay, I'm confused. Are we on 5.05, which
Yep,
is
5.05.
authorization for a new, it's my understanding we deferred that item because there was a request to defer it.
May I move to rescind our previous action? Is that staff's request?
Yes.
That we should not have deferred that?
509 Houston Street.
Second.
Okay. We have a first and a second to rescind our previous deferral, to reconsider the item. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, let's revisit this, please. Thank you for
I'm
the
sorry.
clarification.
We usually have a screen in front of us, and because we have lots of pieces of paper,
Yes.
it's a little bit difficult.
All right.
So back to 509 Houston Street. This was a request for a new loading zone on the south side. This street is also the one that is a one-way. And we approved that, I believe, last year. But the request is for a loading zone in front of this business. We looked for other access points for loading, and there were none.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So for something like this, which seems very obvious since they don't have any other kind of opportunity or space for doing this, what then happens based on the larger context? So if we're saying the loading zone is effective 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., what is the other context on the street? Is it paid parking, or it's just free parking at this juncture? Okay. And so we've not yet assessed Houston Street more largely as to what our intent is there or how that fits in with the parking plan. We have looked at it. I'm sorry. Director, I apologize.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. We actually have looked at this, and for Houston area, and in this area, actually, before we would ever move into meters, I would recommend a time limit and then help with that so that the turns would happen. They do have limited parking. In the past, we actually brought this before y'all, you one-wayed it, and then that's why, but now they're really challenged with being able to have people because, again, employees are parking there, and there's a lot of warehouses around, so warehouse employees over there are parking there. So 8 to 11 would give them the opportunity to get their loading, and then after 11, it would be open up for parking. And I think in the future, again, having that conversation with the Merchants Association for everyone in that area and identifying. I think, one of the reasons why we were a little bit more successful in the downtown area is we did identify places to put the employees. So when we actually did put the meters on and started regulating it, we had places to move the employees to. Otherwise, that would have blown up. And so, again, I think we would have to go in, identify places to put the employees, work on some, cost reductions so that it's not too expensive, work with the businesses of where they could do it. And we haven't really done that. And that's what I'd want to do on 12 South too before we ever move in that direction. But if anything, the first step, if they're having a lot of problems, which they are having some challenges, that's one of the reasons we went to one way and to allow parking on both sides. As the challenge continues, the next step would be to talk to them about where we could put employees and then do timing. And if they still have problems, then that's when you would move into more of an on-street metered kind of concept with them.
Okay, I appreciate that. But it can be just sort of layered in over time. Again, when you establish something as a loading zone,
right,
that can be fine-tuned for future parking and conversation with the area. Okay,
most definitely.
Another question.
Yes.
It's my understanding that this business is closed. 509 Falcon, the coffee shop.
So I know that AJ Capital is making, and another business are making improvements to it and are getting ready to reopen it up. But they've been having challenges with being able to even get stuff to renovate and all of that. So that's why they've come forth and asked for us, because the business is turning. And that will be opening soon. So that was one of the reasons. So if you notice, it was brought forward by a business and also with the major corporation of that they're looking to actually create a different, I can't remember what it is. I'm so sorry. They told me and I totally,
There's actually two businesses. There's the pink building right behind
drawn
this
a blank completely of what it's going to be. Do you remember? A cocktail lounge and a flamingo bar, coffee bar. Thank you, Andrew. So two things. So,
All right.
thank you.
Any further questions by commissioners? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, this is passed. Okay. All right. Okay.
They've got yoga on Sunday.
Try that out.
Okay. All right. Okay. The last item on our agenda is the public comment, regulation, review, and approve. And what is it? Per the Tennessee Open Meeting Act, Public Charter Number 300, members of the public are invited to provide comments on matters that are germane and over which the TPC has authority. Would that be the correct language?
That's actually, I just looked back and failed to scratch out some more words.
So
I'm just going to read it. And I think the recommended language here is actually to open it up a little bit beyond the Tennessee Code and actually give you the authority to hear matters beyond what's on the items of the agenda, because we already have a section here that allows you to open up for public hearings on items that people are coming to speak to, but this would be just items that you have authority over as a Traffic and Parking Commission. So I would just like to basically read this again with the new language. Per the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, Public Chapter Number 300, members of the public are invited to provide comment on matters over which the Traffic and Parking Commission has authority. To allow time for all, and then new sentence, to allow time for all, and then you can finish reading. Members of the public who wish to speak, each speaker's time for comment will be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes per person. To provide comment and maintain meeting order, members of the public must sign up at the advertised meeting location prior to the call to order, period. And then the last sentence is, we strike the last sentence. We just wanted to give basically the flexibility for you to place this public comment period basically right after the minutes are approved and then before the consent agenda, just like we have today.
Okay. So, Commissioners, how we did it today, was that acceptable to you all? It seems an appropriate time to take comments not related to the agenda was after the minutes.
Yeah, I appreciated that the folks could come and share about Murfreesboro Pike and
Yes.
Lafayette. I think that affords community members
Yes.
just another avenue to share stuff that is, again, germane to the work that we do, even though it's not a specific agenda item.
Right, because we think we have been good about trying to let people speak when they have come, and so this opens up a new avenue as well. Okay, so do we need to adopt this language, or do we need a motion to adopt this language formally?
The language that I read, yes.
Yes. Is everyone okay with that language? Council member, you okay? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the new language.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And just one last thing, I realized I had some notes, and one of the things I was going to say at the beginning of the meeting I didn't say was a dear friend of mine, and maybe many others, passed away, Charlie Strobel, And, it came up during the discussion about homeless, and many, unfortunately, victims of pedestrian deaths are homeless individuals. And I know Charlie Strobel would want us to make sure that we, as part of the spirit of hospitality, that would be extended to the homeless as well, and making sure it was safe for them to be pedestrians on the street. So I did just want to, because Charlie was a dear friend. I'm a longtime volunteer for Room at the Inn, and he was a friend of my family. He each time my parents passed away, he came and visited or called, and so and members of his family are members of my church at Christ the King, and so it's just a long connection, and I hope that we'll honor his legacy through this commission by making sure that we improve public safety and make the streets safe for all. So thank y'all for letting me pontificate for a moment.
Mr. Chair, Margaret Wrinkle has a fabulous column today in the New York Times. Only she could write about Father Strobel like that. And sometimes I know staff is working so hard on getting this parking thing out, and it's always something with it. But I would like to get some direction, and I know there's talk in the council about reviving some other stuff about really what our plans are for pedestrian safety that we as a city can do. So I know you all are swamped.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd be more than happy to bring a quick presentation to y'all about the pedestrian safety initiatives we're taking under Vision Zero. Some of the projects we've actually already done that have improved pedestrian safety, and as well as some that are forthcoming in the very near future. We've done some quick bills. I know recently we just finished a project out on Dickerson where we did a quick build and using tactical urbanism practices and we did that in partnership with TDOT. So I want to thank my partners at TDOT, as well as Walk Bike, and also with the Civic Design Group. And we went out and we actually built out a pedestrian refuge. We improved the signage. We painted the sidewalks where there's actually only asphalt, and we kind of defined it with doing some paint. We hired a local artist who actually built a piano, an ongoing piano, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we're doing a lot of those initiatives moving forward, but I'll be more than happy to bring a quick presentation before y'all and share out anytime we have a chance to kind of share what we're doing. I always want to have the staff have opportunity to talk about it, because you're right, they are working extremely hard to try to reduce the number of fatalities and serious injuries that are occurring on our roadway for the most vulnerable users.
One other thing, I noticed some cities have those flags you can get and carry across when you're crossing the street, and then put it down once you crossed it in a container. And I thought about that when she was talking about Lafayette area there, because there's so many lanes. So
Yeah.
maybe
I
down the
did
road.
that in Fort Lauderdale, and I will tell you, we were out there every week replacing the flags. I don't know what anybody wants with them, but they do walk away. But we will definitely take a look at it, and add to it. Lafayette is actually on our high injury network. Murfreesboro is on the high injury network, all of that area. So there are some opportunities, and we're really targeting all of that. Murfreesboro is also getting ready to go under a study with through WeGo that we're partnering with them on to look at that transit corridor and how we can improve it. And we're looking at how we can improve transit connections from a pedestrian perspective, so it's safe. So we'll take another hit at it. We have no problem with that. We just I need more people and more money and more time. But we're trying to fix 20 years worth of work in a very short amount of time. But we're working on it.
80 years, I would say.
Huh?
About 80 years behind.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little bit gracious. I lack at that sometimes.
And I also wanted to just kind of bring attention to, because we are on the topic of pedestrian fatalities. Her name was Yueli Mieja Primero. She was killed 2-3 weeks ago on Dickerson Road, and we're just wanted to make sure we say her name, but to also just bring attention to this for the record, and to make sure that we ask Metro PD to continue to look for the person who did this, and if there's anything that we could do to address that specific crossing, quickly, similar to what we just did up here on Dickerson Pike, to kind of address this issue, because I canvassed out there personally right after, and it is a problem area. It's low lighting, there's no crosswalk for probably about a mile and a half. So if there's something we could do quickly, similar to what we did just a few weeks ago, that would really try to so people can know that that the city cares and that we're trying to do something.
Yeah. And I will add, unfortunately, we have that in many places that occur in the city. More than I mean, Mondays are my worst days. I hate coming in on Mondays and getting the emails of what occurred, from Thursday to Sunday. And it breaks my heart. And I will tell you, I have that happen everywhere. And so we do try to get out there and make those improvements. The Vision Zero team works with also the Vision Zero Advisory Board and breaking down and looking at what caused the crashes with the police department. They actually also go out times and do investigations and look at what can improve. And so if there is a lighting issue where we can improve it, and we can do that quick change with NES, we do. Jason was actually very instrumental where we did this project on Dickerson and getting LED lights added, and they just got signed off on. So we haven't even approved a fixture yet. He got them to go buy some LED lights and put it out there so that we could brighten up that pedestrian crossing. So where there's those opportunities, we do try to grab a hold of them and make some difference. I have this happening everywhere, which is really sad. So my number one ask of folks is please just pay attention to your area surroundings, look out for the most vulnerable users, which are our pedestrians and our bicyclists, and let's do the speed limit so everyone gets home safe. And if we were doing that, I think we would see a lot less deaths occurring on the roadway. And please, if you're in a car, wear your seatbelt. I have to ask that as well, because a lot of our deaths in cars are involving people that are not seatbelted, and they're being thrown from the cars and dying. So, but our most vulnerable users, we're always trying to find ways, and unfortunately, I have this all over the city, and we want to do more. We do. We really do. But we are looking at that as every time a crash happens, we dig in deeper to it. So to see what we can do in the quick short term turnaround.
Chair.
So thank you.
Yes,
If I may, I do want to acknowledge Commissioner Adams and all the good work that he personally is doing with Walk Bike Nashville on Dickerson and some of our major corridors. So he is really just personally and professionally invested in doing really excellent work. And I appreciate that y'all are being responsive, but I do want to articulate that, Walk Bike Nashville did identify, these deadly crossings. And I know we've partnered with TDOT, but, that kind of how do we eat the elephant sort of a thing, like where I think I think we as council members and citizens become very much overwhelmed because we have all these major pikes. They were designed for high-speed throughput. We are having these fatalities. And so I do think it's helpful for citizens to understand, like, these are our top 20 priorities. This is the cost. This is what it takes to deliver it. I think that'll be very important for council to understand relative to y'all's budget, right? And
Yes,
so you
ma'am.
spoke to some of those things earlier, kind of, the quick build striping and some of those things that we can do like that. But, the way we get all this done, colleagues, is making sure that we have ample staff and the funding and the plans. And then, I have always asserted that we will not get this work done if the plans are not very clear and accountable and transparent. So then, we as commissioners and citizens can kind of hold the department in partnership to account for getting these things done, because we've been kind of, going around on this for a long time.
And I have to just share, council member, just real quickly out there on Dickerson, that there is a real big success in that, because a lot of our challenges on the pikes is that it is not our roadway. Yet 6% of our serious injuries and deaths that are occurring to the most vulnerable users are on those roadways. And TDOT did come to the table, and they have agreed to do this pilot, tactical urbanism, so that we could actually take the measurements and show that, hey, we can create something where it's not going to restrict the movement of cars. It's not going to create an unsafe environment. It's actually creating a safer environment for the most vulnerable users, because you're absolutely correct. They designed the cars, they designed the roadways safely for the cars to move, but they did not design them safely for the pedestrian and for the bicyclist. And so these initiatives allow us to study those, provide that data to TDOT so that they're not afraid to allow us to continue to experiment with these types of pilots and move them forward so we have quicker successes. Instead of waiting for some hardscape to happen, we're allowed to do it through these quick builds. So that was a really important outcome that through a grant that we got from Smart Growth and Complete Street Coalition, we were able to build that partnership among those 4 entities, ourselves, TDOT, Walk Bike, and Civic Design, to get this success out of it was a huge lift, and super proud of the whole team, that we got it done, because that was a lift even with TDOT, and they came to the table as well.
All right, thank you, everyone. I know it was a long meeting. Thank you for your patience, but lots of good issues.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, sir.
It has been approved. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.